right? Because essentially it's like this snowball effect of not sleeping, not managing our stress, not eating the foods we need. Then our brain isn't functioning properly. Our neurotransmitters aren't functioning properly. And then we end up in these moods and we're like, but I don't get it.
Yeah.
We have to know enough so that we don't end up in this snowball rolling down the hill. Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn, as always, and help me welcome my friend Summer to the pod. Summer, by the way, it's really fun to finally have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jenn.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always at your house, so welcome to my home and the pod.
I'm so excited.
You guys were actually recording in person. Imagine that.
We're recording a pod because we are a pod.
Yes, exactly. So fill everybody in. Summer and I actually met through our networking group. And I guess the rest is history, right? I mean, now we're a pod.
It's true.
Right. And I'm at Summer's house every week for dinner. So
it's the greatest.
Yeah. So thank you for always having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure to make you salad.
Salad and salmon, we always eat. One of these, we are doing a potato theme, so we're going to have fries.
Fries coming soon.
We'll send pictures of that salad and fries.
100%.
So today's episode is actually all about the connection between our food and our mood. So some of you will probably be like, yeah, my mood determines what I eat. Duh, right? And I know we've all said at some point in our lives, I'm not in the mood for that.
Totally.
So it's more than just that. But we all know that feeling of going to a restaurant and feeling like, what am I in the mood for?
So many times I never know what I want to eat. I'm like, I'm hungry. I think I'm hungry, but I have no idea what I'm in the mood for.
So we're going to talk all about it. And actually, so we'll start with more of the science stuff because I think it's fascinating. And then we'll get into more of that where it's what do I feel like having? First thought, though, for our members, here's what you're getting this week. So you're getting the top 20 mood-boosting foods. Your recipe also includes a few of them. So it's the recipe for grilled salmon with blueberry balsamic sauce and green beans.
Yum.
Yes, it's so good. And because it's March, the last month of the quarter, it's your live Q&A session, which we're doing as a one-on-one again. Some of you I know have already booked it. So for those of you who haven't, the link will be in your email with the recipe and your list of the top 20 mood-boosting foods. Yeah. So summer's ready. So if you're sitting here and thinking, it's really about time I become a member, you are correct. It is. So here's what you do. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions. So with all of the offerings you get as a member, it pays for itself. You're saving more than that $10 cost. And as I always say, show yourself that your health is a priority with this membership. Plus, by being a member, you support this podcast and this community so we can continue bringing you new episodes and experts every week. So one more time, all you have to do, go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or forget remembering the link and just click the link in the show notes. Make it easy. Once you're there, you click support now, enter your email, payment info, hit subscribe, and you're all set. You will be getting this week's recipe for the grilled salmon with blueberry balsamic sauce and green beans, the top 20 mood-boosting foods, and the link to schedule your live one-on-one. And by the way, you decide what we're going to talk about. We could just shoot the shit or we could answer your questions. So you decide. It's up to you.
What a value.
Legit. I've been told so many times to raise the price, but I like that it's
affordable.
No-brainer.
Yeah.
So, all right, I know I mentioned, those mood-boosting foods. So let's talk about a little of the science of this because It's actually biology. So when we think about the connection between our food and our mood, it's more than just being hangry, right? There's actually more than 100 substances that can act as neurotransmitters in the brain. And the neurotransmitter, like a lot of them we've heard of, like we know like norepinephrine and oxytocin and endorphins, right? And then there's like serotonin we hear about all the time with sleep. So those are examples of neurotransmitters, but what really happens with dopamine and serotonin and all these neurotransmitters is that they're really dictating how we feel, whether it's our energy or our mood or all of those kinds of things.
So are these neurotransmitters telling us what we feel like eating?
No. It's more the other way around, that what we're eating either supports proper neurotransmitter function or doesn't, or can sometimes disrupt neurotransmitters and cause an imbalance. And that's where we end up in potentially a detrimental place for our health. So the things that we do that cause a, imbalance in those neurotransmitters. So like we said, poor dietary choices, right? Like processed foods, alcohol, toxins are a big thing. And that could be, we talk about toxins in our environment or toxins that are in our food or things that we don't even realize. Your genetics certainly play a factor, but we'll also talk about how our lifestyle can actually impact how our genetics play out. Sensory overload is a big one too, which I know I suffer from a lot because I'm not great at like only doing one thing at a time. So that can even impact our neurotransmitters. And the other interesting thing, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit, is bowel dysfunction can create an imbalance in neurotransmitters. So when we think about the connection between our food choices and our brain, like it's real.
When you say the sensory impacts our neurotransmitters, is that from all of our senses?
Yeah, it's because it's our eyes. So for example, like with blue light and computers and then sleep, right? We might be wanting to go to sleep, but our way of winding down is watching TV. So we're watching TV, we have blue light coming at our eyes, which is saying time to be awake. And, we're then, maybe somebody around us made food. Now we're smelling food and we're like, oh wait, maybe that sounds good. Maybe I would want to eat something. And then I'm staying awake. And then it's like mass confusion.
So interesting.
Yeah, because like the eyes are signaling daylight, the time, which would say to the brain, we want the excitatory neurotransmitters to be awake. But the time of day and our body being exhausted from a full day is sort of saying, no, it's time to sleep. We want the inhibitory neurotransmitters. And then food is like another element of saying, wait, like food makes me happy and food gives me energy. And so that's a date, right? So it's all these confusing signals to the brain.
Yeah.
So the other interesting thing when we talk about brain health, cognitive health, is blood flow. So blood flow to the brain is important for learning, mental activities, and more. And think about it, like if we're exhausted mentally and still trying to do things like work, it puts us in a bad mood. Exactly. So proper blood flow requires sufficient antioxidant and mineral support. And that certainly could come from supplementation, but I always say we can't supplement our way out of poor nutrition.
Absolutely.
Right? So we have to make sure that we're getting the good stuff in. And we've talked about it in some past episodes about oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is what happens when we have an overrun of free radicals in the body. And so we need antioxidants to combat the free radicals and prevent the oxidative stress. So
what are some great foods that have antioxidants?
Yeah, so antioxidants are like vitamin C is a big one, and in particular for the brain, and we'll talk more about that. Really all of your phytonutrients, and astaxanthin is another great antioxidant. There's an antioxidant called OPCs, which stands for, oligomeric proanthocyanidins, which are really powerful antioxidants in the body.
I mean, with a name like that, they sound powerful.
Right. They better be good if it takes that much to pronounce their name. But we want all different kinds of antioxidants in our system because antioxidants in the body sort of act like locks and keys. So we want to have a variety of antioxidants so that we have keys for all of the locks instead of trying, like if we say only vitamin C as an antioxidant, then we're only able to fill the receptor sites that are that shape, right? So we want a variety of antioxidants, and that comes from a variety of fruits and vegetables is really the moral of that story.
Is there a particular fruit or veggie that is especially great for giving us antioxidants?
They all really have antioxidants, and they all have different kinds. So it's the variety, but like all of your fruits and vegetables are really going to give you different kinds of antioxidants.
Awesome. Love my fruits and veggies.
You do. You're really good about it. So we'll get into some more of those specifics. Another interesting thing with oxidative stress, it can also be the result of an accumulation of copper and iron. So that in particular also has cognitive health risk factors. Using antacids and medications that deplete zinc can compete with the copper and the iron's role in the oxidative stress and cognitive health. So it's all this stuff that sort of comes together. Alcohol.
Yeah, let's talk about alcohol.
So we all pick our battles, right? Like, you know, I was drinking with you Friday. So, yep. I mean, you weren't drinking. I was drinking. But like, I only had a couple glasses of wine. But chronic alcohol consumption decreases our gut's absorption of essential nutrients from our food. And that becomes critically important for our brain health. So the question really becomes not just with, you know, alcohol and all these food choices, but what are the things that we can do to sort of alter the path and support our brain and support all those neurotransmitters? So one of the big things is the stuff that we talk about all the time here. So managing blood sugar, maintaining healthy lean muscle mass by fitness, right? And building muscle. And, you know, all the steps that support our metabolic health. So that's also sleep, managing stress, right? So all the things that we talk about all the time, but I think sometimes we don't really connect it to our mood. And so that's really the crux of all of this.
I think that's a really interesting conversation around alcohol and our mood, because so many people drink in order to change their mood, and they think that that's what's going to change their mood, and it oftentimes does. But can you talk more around what else it's doing?
Yeah. So, and some of this, like, the other weird thing about it, like, alcohol is technically a downer, right? And the way it functions in the body. But a lot of people, when they drink, they feel better. And it's really more of this, like, shutting off of a part of our brain, I think. Like, I don't know that that's actually science of what's happening, but I feel like, in effect, that's what's happening. And when we're talking about it in terms of our gut, the alcohol consumption impacts our biology. It impacts our ability to absorb nutrients. It impacts our ability to detoxify, right? So we talk about the liver all the time with alcohol. Like, the liver isn't going to process any of the foods that we're eating until the alcohol is out of our system. So it really is so, like, I think when people think about alcohol, they're focused on, like, that moment or those few hours. But the reality is the impact of alcohol on our system is so much longer than just those few hours.
How long does it take for the liver to process all that alcohol? Say you had 3 glasses of wine. How long would that take?
Depends on your liver, right? Like how taxed is your liver? How much detoxification does your liver need to do anyway? What are the rest of your food choices? How much does your liver function normally? Like, so it's really different person to person depending on how much they abuse their liver and then all the other things that they're doing that require detoxification.
Yeah.
Because alcohol is not the only thing that our body needs to detoxify.
Absolutely.
Right, especially if we're eating processed foods or any of these other things, or we eat foods that have hormones in them. Like that all needs to be processed and, figured out. So it's complicated. And like some of that, I don't even know like the details of like the alcohol stuff, but it's interesting.
So don't do drugs, kids.
Right. Thanks. Your PSA. So I want to talk about some supplementation that is helpful. In particular, coenzyme Q10, omega-3s, amino acids, and antioxidants and minerals. And we'll break some of those down in a second. A quick note on blood sugar. So elevated blood glucose exerts an adverse effect on neuronal integrity. So those neurons basically don't function properly. So elevated blood sugar, especially over long periods of time, has significant consequences for cognition. And when we think about our brain health, it's more than just our mood. It's our ability to sort of think through it all. So the way it works is, so insulin affects the thyroid. The thyroid function affects the insulin production. And the insulin affects the endothelial function. So endothelial cells, I don't want to get too sciencey and in the weeds, right? But basically, the brain doesn't get signaling or organizational cues as it once did from insulin when we have constant elevated blood glucose. So the long and the short of it is like...
It's all connected.
It's all connected. There's also a really interesting connection between, it's called BDNF, which stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So BDNF acts on the areas of the brain that are involved in learning and memory and what's called like higher order thinking.
Cool.
Right? So BDNF is known to stimulate neurogenesis, or the survival of existing neurons and the brain's adaptation. So when we're low on BDNF, we have generally low BDNF is present when there's low mental affect, age, and hormone-related cognitive decline. So what we see is that a decrease in omega-3 consumption, an increase in refined foods, and an increase in saturated fat leads to a decrease in BDNF, which creates anxiety and depression, cognitive decline, and metabolic disorder. Wow. So, yeah. So to support BDNF, we want to manage our sun exposure, limit the alcohol intake, stop smoking, exercise regularly, moderate stress, big one, and, we want full nights of restful sleep. So there was also a really interesting study that actually this was on Clubhouse. Some of the dietitians in a room, like once a week, they talk about some of the studies in the news. Mm-hmm. So this study actually they were talking about last week, and it's the connection between lifestyle choices and mental health. And I was like, oh, we're about to be talking about this. This is perfect. So I looked up the study. So basically what this study found is advanced biological aging is also correlated with a decline of mental health and psychiatric disorders and psychological stress. So advanced epigenetic aging was linked to worse somatic health, mortality, depressive disorder, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Advanced transcriptomic aging, which has to do with like our cells and like the signaling of our cells and DNA and like mRNA stuff. So advanced aging in like the RNA of our cells was found in those with higher blood pressure, higher cholesterol levels, higher fasting glucose, higher body mass index. So it's all of these health things that we're experiencing. Fast forward into this declined state in general, like basically putting us in an aging state of our body, which creates cognitive decline and psychological challenge.
Wow.
Like, seriously. So, I'm trying to like pull out the pieces of the study that were most interesting. This was good. The presence of current depression and depression severity were associated with advanced epigenetic and proteomic aging. So again, like these things that we're experiencing are worse when we are making the lifestyle choices that age us, which is those poor nutrition choices, not managing our stress, not working out enough. Like it's this giant snowball.
Yeah, and we see so many people who they're very stressed out and they have all this anxiety and they're not getting sleep because they feel like they have so much to do and they're not realizing that the sleep is important and that's going to help them to feel less stressed.
Exactly. And that's like one of my biggest pet peeves is the whole like sleep when you're dead, do more, do more. And like I used to subscribe to it.
Yeah, so did
like,
I.
I mean, I was working full time. I was building my business on the side. Like there wasn't enough time in the day. you know? But we don't realize sort of like the toll that it's taking. So to focus on brain health, right, and maintaining optimal brain activity, it begins with antioxidants, vitamins, and fatty acids. So the synergy of nutrients is what supports the strength and function of our brain chemistry over time. So big ones, alpha lipoic acid or ALA. So think spinach, broccoli, yams, potatoes, Brussels sprouts, carrots, beets, red meat actually, and organ meat. You're going to hear that a lot in these. It's actually really good for our brain.
Interesting.
I don't eat them, but I do remember my grandparents eating them. Maybe there's something to it.
So what I heard was potatoes are good for our brains.
Right. Yes, exactly. And then we can have another conversation about what happens when we turn those potatoes into French fries. So like #balance. But yeah. So another one, like the antioxidants, right? The plant-derived antioxidants. So vitamin C was a big one. But again, it's all of our fruits and vegetables. We don't need to be picky. The variety is better too, because again, it's giving us, right, a variety of keys for the variety of locks. Coenzyme Q10 is a big one. And we talked about this when we talked about heart health. But this comes from salmon and tuna, right? Like those fattier fish, organ meats again. Some whole grains have CoQ10. And then for a lot of us, CoQ10 is one that we supplement with as well, because especially if you're on a statin drug, CoQ10 in the body is produced by the same mechanisms and process as cholesterol. So if you're taking a med that suppresses cholesterol production, it's going to suppress CoQ10 production. B vitamins are massive when it comes to cognitive function and neurotransmitters and mood. So B vitamins help decrease stress, improve mood, maintain healthy levels of serotonin. They increase our energy. So B vitamins, most people think about them in terms of meat, right? And then eggs, some dairy, some beans, sometimes like seeds and nuts. Dark leafy greens are a good one. Citrus fruits, bananas, These will all give us B vitamins, but B vitamins might be a place to supplement as well because they are water soluble. So if we don't use them, we pee them out. And B vitamins are eaten up by stress. So even when we don't realize we're stressed, our body is like in a stress response, and that eats up all of our B vitamins.
That's so interesting.
So yeah, it's like B vitamins are also like, you can't find your keys. You know, you're like, where did I put them? Or you walk in a room and you can't remember why you walked in the room. You grab your phone and then you're like, what was I going to do? Those are all like, we need some B vitamins. Another one, acetyl L-carnitine. So again, more from meat, poultry, dairy has some as well. And amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. So those are all great for the brain. The other piece that we often don't connect to our brain is omega-3s. So omega-3s are one of those, we call them essential. Essential means that our body cannot make it. So we have to eat it or take it because our body can't make it. So anytime you see the word essential with anything, that's what it means. And so we see essential fatty acids, right? So omega-3s are essential fatty acids. And they typically, the ones that we want for our cognitive function come from mostly marine and animal sources. So there are some plant sources, but the interesting piece to me, so EPA is the type of essential fatty acids that's beneficial for mood and cognitive support. It has value for attention and behavior. DHA, another type of omega-3s, is neuronal ion transmission, improves cognitive and cellular aging. Yes, please. And actually 15 to 20% of our brain weight is lipids in the form of DHA. Cell membranes of our eyes are 50% or over 50% DHA.
Wow.
So yeah, like omega-3s become incredibly important when we talk about proper cognitive function and all those neurotransmitters being able to fire, right? Because essentially it's like this snowball effect of not sleeping, not managing our stress, not eating the foods we need. Then our brain isn't functioning properly. Our neurotransmitters aren't functioning properly. And then we end up in these moods and we're like, but I don't get it.
Yeah.
Right. Really quick, stress-inducing foods that we want to stay away from. Refined sugar, table salt, processed food, junk food, alcohol, and coffee. Now, coffee is a big one. I know.
That's like the thing that everybody who's stressed out is usually drinking.
Right. And it's crazy because it's like, it's a snowball effect. So what do we want to do? Like, what foods can we choose that help mitigate stress? Dark green vegetables, avocado, berries, tomatoes, nuts, and plant protein.
Is it only tomatoes if you're eating them raw, or would that work for like tomato sauce, ketchup, any form of eating a tomato?
No, the cooked forms of tomatoes are still going to give you like those antioxidant properties and stuff like that. So you're fine. Good question.
So
though.
Add that ketchup to your fries.
Right. Ketchup, though, we have to be careful because that has that refined sugar. So, get the ones that are cleaner, So I know this was a lot of science, but we do have those foods to focus on, right, for our mood and mental health. And then I want to get into more of like the softer science side. So let's take a quick message from our partner for this episode, and then we'll get into all of that stuff. So thank you to Lumiere de Vie Skincare. Lumiere de Vie Skincare was founded by Amber Ridinger McLaughlin in response to her own experience of mere marginal results from countless costly creams. She realized the revitalization of her youthful skin could only occur if she developed products herself. Working closely with beauty scientists and exploring the most advanced ingredients derived from the earth and sea, Amber created Lumiere de Vie, the next generation of skincare. The extensive line of luxury skincare products are designed to address all skin types and concerns, with the highest quality natural ingredients and powerful formulas that help heal, soothe, moisturize, and protect. Lumiere de Vie acts as first aid for your skin. The result, rejuvenated, luminous, beautiful looking skin. So we're talking all about, our mood. Full disclosure, washing my face with Lumiere de Vie puts me in a good mood. It does. Morning and night, it's like the spa. And I highly recommend, it's like the skincare value kit, because it gives you the cleanser, the toner, and the moisturizer. The women's is $125, the men's is $90, and you get a discount from us. But the ingredients are incredible, and it really is like the way to put me in a good mood. So to get 10% off your order, text the word SKIN, SKIN, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word SKIN to 844-947-4846 to try Lumiere de Vie skincare and get 10% off. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, so focusing on food and mood, there's actually one more piece of biology that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention.
Hit me.
So it's called the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is actually the biological connection between our gut and our brain. So think about it, it's like a highway, and it has 5 lanes of traffic. Okay. And the messages, right, go between our gut and our brain in these 5 lanes. But what's insane about it is that 4 lanes go from the body to the brain. 1 lane goes from the brain to the body. So if our body, and in particular our gut, is out of balance, all of those signals to the brain are out of balance. So a few stats. The vagus nerve provides 75% of all rest and digest activities. Really important, especially as we talk about stress, right? 80% of its job is to communicate messages between the gut and the brain. It regulates the muscle movement necessary to keep you breathing. It helps improve our mood. It already uses like electrical stimulation as treatment. And it's essential in fear management, right? So we think about like that gut instinct, messages. It's like this feedback loop between the gut and the brain. So healthy functioning the vagus nerve helps us bounce back from stressful situations and overcoming fear.
Wow.
Yeah. So how can we tone the vagus nerve? One of my favorites, like we've talked about humming. If you've ever been to any of our webinars, by the way, we've talked a lot about the vagus nerve, but hum. Deep breathing.
How long should you hum for?
A few minutes, but I would do it
often?
like a few times a day, maybe. The more you do it, the more toned the nerve. Like if you think about the nerve almost like a muscle, the more we tone it, the stronger it gets. The Valsalva maneuver. So like if your ears are ever plugged from the airplane, you like hold your nose and close your mouth and try to like breathe out. That helps tone the vagus nerve. Like you don't want to do it too hard, but a few times. Also like putting your face in like ice cold water.
I thought you were going to say putting your face in ice cream.
I mean, that could work for your mood, although it would ruin my hair and I would be really upset. But in the moment, like if you really loved ice cream, that might be the best mood booster ever. So I like that. That's amazing. So basically, right, the whole thing is there's actual biology to the connection between our food and our mood. But knowing these things doesn't necessarily mean that we're actually going to do it, right? Like we can know all this stuff, but life is another thing.
Yeah, it's all about implementing it.
So, and that's where I feel like there's more of like the emotional side, right? Because food in particular with emotion, right? Like celebration is food. We're in a great mood. Let's go eat. We're sad. Let me eat something, right? Like we mourn with food.
It's such a ritual that needs to be changed in our culture. Let's celebrate. Let's have cake and sugar and ice cream and alcohol and all the things that are terrible for us.
Exactly. And listen, all things in moderation, right? Even moderation. So like there are certain moments where you're like, yes, this is the moment to indulge. But I think sometimes too, especially when it's coming from the more negative space where we want this food to make us feel better.
Eat your feelings.
Yeah. And then sometimes it actually momentarily makes us feel better, and then we end up beating ourselves up over it sometimes, right? Because we know intellectually that those weren't the best choices for us.
Or sometimes you feel momentarily great because, oh, it's so delicious, and even 10 minutes later you feel disgusting inside.
Yeah. And then you're like, why did I do that?
Yep.
So there's also this food and mood component in that. Like that's the perfect example of like in the moment it seems like the best choice, but then we don't feel well physically or mentally and it backfires. You know, there's also like, I'm so guilty of this is the hangry, right? That sounded funny when I said it the first time. You know, like when you say a word so many times that it then sounds bizarre. That's how I felt. Right. But like we get so hungry that we're in a cranky mood. Well, now we know the science of why that's actually the case. But that's also a function of our blood sugar getting so low, which means that we're craving the foods that raise our blood sugar really quickly, which is all of those same foods that continue to disrupt the neurotransmitter balance. Right. It's like this giant snowball.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things to take away is that we have to know enough so that we don't end up in this snowball rolling down the hill of being in a bad mood, choosing food because we're in a bad mood, then that food making us feel bad, then we're in a bad mood again. Like it's literally this giant snowball that we have to somehow get out of.
So what's your recommendation for clients who say, I get really hangry and then I make poor eating decisions?
Yeah. So it's interesting because a lot of times when they have that experience, the assumption is that it's their willpower, right? I just don't have the willpower to make the healthful choice. And it's actually not willpower at all. It's science and it's hormones, because when our blood sugar gets that low, it's chemical in the body that we're craving the foods that are going to raise our blood sugar. So one of the things that we talk about is focusing on the clock sometimes. So actually this happened with a client last week. We talked about just setting a clock when she eats something. So generally a meal will probably last someone 4 to 5, maybe 5.5 hours, depending on how much and what they're having. A snack is somewhere more like 1 to 2 hours, depending on how much. So depending on what you eat, you can set an alarm to then just check in, right? So if I have a snack, let's say it's 10:30 in the morning, I have a snack, I can set an alarm for 11:30 just to check in. It doesn't mean I have to eat at 11:30. It's just a moment to check in, to be like, how am I feeling physically? Because the other side of this is, the physical hunger, like what's our stomach telling us versus what our mind is telling us.
I find a lot of people make poor eating decisions because they use the excuse of, I'm too busy to cook up a healthy meal, or I'm too busy to chop vegetables or cut up fruit or go to the grocery store, so I'm just going to eat the chips and the garbage and the sugar and whatever's in the pantry.
Yeah. And we can employ any excuse or reason we want to.
Yep.
The reality is healthful food doesn't have to take any longer. Like I've mentioned this to you guys before, like I'll make a 1 cookie sheet meal that has some vegetables and a piece of fish in the middle, and it's 12 minutes in the oven, and including the chopping time, maybe it's 15 minutes. If you're looking for a handful of something to grab, you could grab some nuts and carrot sticks.
Yep.
And that takes no longer than grabbing a bag of chips.
Buy cut up fruit.
Right. So it's interesting because we can make anything mean anything. And it then becomes a choice. It's funny, even in preparing for this, I was just reading about a study that was talking about these kinds of choices. And separate from the study, there's a book called The Zen of Eating that came out like a million years before people talked about it as like intuitive eating. But there was a story about this guy learning that the meaning of what actually happens is entirely internal, that there are the facts and then there's the meaning we give it. So the facts are, it doesn't take any extra time to grab a handful of carrots than it does to grab a handful of chips. But we've applied some story to it. And so the good news about that is we can change it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things too that I'm really big on is collecting the data in a tracker or a journal or whatever so that we can see it. And when we approach this more from a place of like, a scientist might be an aggressive term, but maybe like a researcher, right? Like we want to collect the data and see what it's telling us. So that's why like some of these things are great things to start to collect. Like how long does this meal last me? Right? So when we set those alarms to check in and see how hungry are we? Those are really interesting things to track. I've talked about hunger ratings before. So in our nutrition nugget on hunger, I talked about hunger rating. So you do like a scale of 0 to 10 and you put words to every number. So just for example, or like 1 to 10, whatever. 1 would be like, I'm ravenously hungry. I'm going to eat the table and everything that's on it. 5 is like satisfied, content, could probably eat more, but don't need it. And 10 is like, oh my God, I'm so full. Like I have to take a deep breath and like unbutton my pants. Yep. Right. And we've all been all of these numbers at different points. So the objective, like write this on a Post-it, give words to each number, and then put that Post-it on your tracker so that before and after every time you eat, you can check in with your physical hunger. Like what's my body telling me? What's my stomach telling me? As far as like where on this list, like what words identify what I'm feeling.
That's a great tip.
So we want to track that before and after we eat. And those are like, that's helping us check in with our like actual physical hunger so that we can learn the difference between like what physical hunger feels like and what our mood telling us we're hungry feels like.
Yeah. And then based on what they're eating, they can also keep track of what's your mood like after you eat garbage food versus healthy food.
Exactly. So it allows us to see, oh, am I eating proportionate to my hunger? Or am I eating because this is what I typically eat at this time? And then our mood, like how good do we feel? So you could also track your mood with each food, and then also even like for the day. How is my mood today on a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, right? How is my energy? I like energy even more than mood sometimes.
Yeah.
So like a 1 on energy might be like, I can hardly roll out of bed. And a 10 would be like, I'm jumping out of bed, ready to do it all again, right? Like, how's our energy? And you might want to check that at different times of the day, you know? And then similar to the energy, the mood, the hunger rating, I also recommend maybe tracking a self-esteem rating. So how do I feel about myself right now? Am I a 1, like fake it till I make it? Or am I a 10 of I'm feeling awesome, get out of my way, like I got this?
Do you think a lot of people are going to rate that self-esteem based on whether or not they felt like they were able to make healthy eating decisions?
So it's interesting because they're definitely connected. But one of the things that we find is that it's sort of like a chicken and an egg. Mm-hmm. And similar to the snowball of the downward spiral, we can have an upward spiral. So I feel better because I ate these foods. And so I feel better about myself. And that's also chemical and biological, as we talked about earlier, right? And we can also see that that then perpetuates healthful choices. And we also see that when I feel badly about myself because I've made a healthful choice, it makes it harder to make the next healthful choice, right? Like sometimes it creates this other snowball. So the beauty of what this does is that it makes it black and white. So instead of having to try to point that out, it's there.
Yeah.
And people can see it for themselves. And that's really, by the way, the difference between a health coach and a nutritionist or a dietitian. Like my role is to help you figure it out for yourself rather than me to tell you all the answers.
And it's so much more powerful when you figure it out yourself.
Exactly. So there you have it. Rank your hunger, your self-esteem, your mood, your energy. Pay attention to all those vitamins and minerals and nutrients and all the things that are coming from your food to help you have proper neurological function, which is our mood. Summer, any questions about the connection between our food and our mood?
I have a tip for your listeners.
Ooh, do it.
Declutter your pantry. Get rid of all the junk. Once you use Jenn's tips and go through and determine which foods are impacting your moods negatively, then get rid of those foods. Stop buying them and get them out of your house so you stop eating them.
Exactly. Yeah. By the way, Summer's a professional organizer. So that's the decluttering of the professional organizer. But it's so true. Because, a lot of people will say, oh, like I just don't want those triggers around. And I always think of it like take the easy way out. It's a lot easier when our environment is set up to support us.
And people think that, oh, it's easiest for me to grab the chips because they're in the cabinet, or for me to grab the chocolate and the sugar and the candy and the cookies because they're in your home. But it's not so easy if you have to go down to the grocery store and go get it.
1,000%.
I'm all for setting up your environment.
Yes. Actually, interesting. This is sort of a tangent, but I had a client years and years ago who wanted her indulgent choices around. Like it felt very depriving to not have them at all. But she had them like in a lockbox in the back of her closet behind her shoes. Yeah. So that it wasn't easy to get to. And with everything she had to move physically and do to be able to access it, it was points where she could check in with herself to be like, do I really want this? Like, do I want this enough to find the key? Do I want this enough to move the shoes? Do I want this enough to get the box out of the back of the closet?
Yeah. I've seen those lock boxes where you put the cookies inside and there's like a timer and there's code and you got to crack the code.
That might be excessive, but it's true. It's all the same logic.
I've seen people put their cell phones in there too. Like lock their phone in a plastic box. But then I've also seen where people get so frustrated because they want to check their phone that they just smash open the box and defeats the purpose.
I've seen that too. It's like I met this woman probably a year and a half ago who studies flow.
Yeah.
And so like the lockbox thing for your phone was a big thing that she talked about. Awesome. All right, so I think that means it's time for our nutrition nugget. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. Give it to me.
Okay, so this week we're talking about 7 grams equals 1 ounce. And I've talked about this before when we're talking about reading labels and in our nutrition nugget on protein. But I've gotten this question a couple times, so I figured let's address it so that everybody has the answer. So the question I'm getting from a few of you is, maybe it's not a question, but a statement of 7 grams is not 1 ounce. And so you are correct if we're talking about weight. So the big clarification here is that when we're looking at nutrition facts, we're not talking about net weight. Okay, if we were converting grams to ounces by weight, 1 ounce is like 28.34 something grams. Okay? But again, I want to repeat this. We're not talking about the weight. What we're talking about is the amount of protein in a food. And so where this comes from is that if you had an ounce of cooked protein, like fish or chicken or an egg white, okay, 1 ounce of that food provides your body with 7 grams of protein. So this gives us a way of wrapping our head around food labels, because food labels talk about things in grams, but we don't think about protein in grams. We think about protein in ounces.
Yeah.
At least here in the United States. For all of our international listeners, thank you for sticking with us. Right. So I want to look at a couple of examples here. So cheese, because I think this is a big one where it comes up, right? So I took Sargento sliced baby Swiss. The package has a net weight of 7 ounces. There are 11 servings in that package. So if you divided 11 by 7, right? Or 7 by 11, right? That serving is less than 1 ounce. But according to the nutrition facts, one slice, a single serving, is giving your body 5 grams of protein. So, right? So, and the 5 grams, if we're comparing 5 grams of protein, right, to 7 grams of protein is 1 ounce, it's a little less than an ounce of protein. So it's the nutrition that's given to our body from that slice of cheese.
Makes sense.
So having said that, that's not the only nutrition in the cheese, right? Not the only thing that it's giving our body, but for the purposes of this conversation. So, and then when we go to eat these foods, we think about it in the context of, are we creating a snack or a meal? So a snack is typically 2 to 3 ounces of protein. So if we were having this cheese as part of a snack, we need more than just that slice of cheese to give ourselves sufficient protein for the snack. Makes sense? Okay. So let's look at a protein bar as another example. So I have the Think Thin, although now they're just called Think, creamy peanut butter flavor protein bar. The package is 10.5 ounces and contains 5 bars. So each bar has a net weight of 2.1 ounces. Then we go to the nutrition facts. The bar contains 20 grams of protein. So we divide that by 7 to convert that number into something that we can wrap our head around, and that's almost 3 ounces of protein. So if it's a snack, this one's cutting it, right? Just as that bar.
Awesome.
Okay, so there on occasion, the net weight and the protein might be closer. And I feel like the example of that is tuna fish. Like if you had a can of tuna. Mm-hmm. So I looked it up. So a can of Bumblebee solid white albacore tuna.
My favorite
packed in water. Okay, so it says net weight is 6 ounces. When we read the label, it has 29 grams of protein. So because it's pure protein, right, there's really not much else in there, it should sort of make sense. And it actually does. 29 divided by 7 is a little over 4. The net weight was 6, and we know that there's some water in there, so that makes sense that it is sort of closer when you're looking at something like tuna versus when you're looking at something like cheese or a protein bar.
So what are some other foods that would be similar to tuna where it would be more like that example?
Any packaged pure protein. So like if you bought chicken breasts and there was nutrition facts on there, right? Like it might be thrown off a bit. Some of the other nutrition facts might be thrown off because maybe it was marinated in something or it had some seasonings on it. But that would be a situation where the protein and the weight are closer. But again, the 7 grams is cooked protein. 7 grams is 1 ounce of cooked protein, and so it's a little bit different when it's raw. Mm-hmm. But we don't really have to think of it when what we're looking at is a chicken breast or a piece of fish, but it's really more, I think it comes up more when we're just looking at food labels and trying to wrap our head around what are we actually getting from this food.
Yeah.
Any lingering questions, or do you think we've cleared it up?
I think that all makes sense.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you again, I really appreciate you being here and joining us, officially joining the podcast.
Thank you.
As always, guys, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Our Facebook page and Twitter, actually all the social media, same handle, at Jenn Trepeck. And this is your personal invitation. Send me a message. I want to hear your key takeaways, your ideas. What questions do you have, right? Like, does something else need clarification? Let me know. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me directly if you're ready to make your health a priority more than it already is. Of course, you could also join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. Remember, becoming a member shows your support for this podcast, this community, and your health. This week, your recipe is for grilled salmon with blueberry balsamic sauce and green beans, the top 20 mood-boosting foods, and your live one-on-one session so that we can hang out, get to know each other. I get to hear your voice, and we can address any of your questions and challenges as well. So I can't wait to chat with you. Remember, guys, good food equals a good mood, and we'll see you back here, another new episode next Wednesday.
That's a mood.
Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.